And welcome to this meeting of the Beach Stewardship Committee. And I'll call this meeting to order. And would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May we have a roll call, please?
Member Kurzman?
Here.
Member Looney?
Here.
Vice Chair Stevens?
Here.
Chair Rothenberger?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. All right. We have to have a motion to approve the agenda.
I'd like to add some items to the agenda.
Okay, what would those items be, John?
First item would be the procedure for getting information between meetings. There's been events that occurred, such as the first reading of the ordinance and a zero tolerance actions on the beach for enforcement, discussions at city commission meetings, and no information was provided to the Beach Stewardship Committee ahead of time. And so the procedure for information getting to IALCO to get to us doesn't seem to be being followed. That was put in place by Jen McMahon previously, so a discussion about what the procedure is to get Beach Stewardship in the loop on decisions, again, I think needs to be discussed.
Could this be discussed under the Stewardship Goals Plan?
Well, that would be a little more of a long-term discussion. I think this is more of a tactical discussion for even before the next meeting. It's just what we need to do, what happened, and what needs to happen, immediately, versus our bigger picture. I mean, this is a look back, and like, what do we ask for, and what has to happen right away? Might be the reason to separate it out.
Okay.
And then my second.
I recall the conversation, and I recall Jennifer taking the action item to do that. I don't know if it's yet a completely new discussion, but yet another ask of when there's significant items happening on the beach, that the Beach Stewardship Committee is kept informed.
Yeah, I'm not trying to have the whole discussion right now, but yeah, that would be most of it.
I agree with you. I remember the conversation.
And she wrote a memo.
And,
Yeah. And then the other...
Staff changes and a lot of things have happened, not making excuses, but
Right.
I recall the conversation.
Yeah. And then my second item would be a discussion, because I mean, I know we have in our agenda to talk about one of our standing items at the end when we do the quarterly report is things about, how many warnings and so forth. But switching to zero warnings. We got zero warning on the fact that there'd be zero tolerance, and having a major shift in how all of our ordinances are considered, I think is a major shift of philosophy on how this beach has always been considered. And so I think a discussion about how that came about, and something I emailed about 12 days ago when that was announced publicly all of a sudden. So a discussion about this new philosophy of beach enforcement that it became effective February 14th with zero warning. I think we need to talk about. So that was the other item, to talk about the new zero tolerance policy.
Okay, we'll need somebody to craft a motion for that.
Well, this is just an item for discussion today, is just to talk about.
I'm in agreement. We can have a quick conversation about
How it
code
happened.
enforcement.
Yeah.
I think that would be good, and we'll do that at the end.
Okay.
Both of those. Okay, so we have a motion to do that?
Well, it's all part of the motion for the consent agenda, right? These are items for the...
I move that we accept the amended agenda to include the two items. A quick rediscussion of keeping the Beach Stewardship Committee apprised of appropriate matters, and the second on code enforcement on the beach.
I second that.
All right, we'll move forward.
Do we need a,
Would you like roll call?
Yes, please.
Member Looney? Here. Member Kurzman?
Yes.
John Stevens?
yes?
Chair Rothenberger?
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. All right, and we need a motion to approve we do. It's my
Audience
bad. First of
comments.
all, we've got audience comments. So how many people do we have?
I have a couple comment cards, but they are specifically for item 4B, so I
Okay.
was holding off
Okay,
got to that.
all right,
I do not have any for general.
okay. All right. So, could we have a motion to accept the minutes for our November 13th meeting?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from our November 13th,
13th.
2004 meeting.
I did read it. Second it?
Yes, second.
Second that?
Member Kurzman?
Yes.
Member Looney? Yes. Vice Chair Stevens?
Yes?
Chair Rothenberger?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, for items of discussion, the first one is the Beach Stewardship Goals Plan. And I'm going to ask Ayako to kind of walk us through this, and we'll have a discussion on it.
Right, so you will recall that the commission at the end of last year had said for all the subcommittees, if they wanted to propose a goal plan to present to them with the resources they would request, what the goals they were wanting. And consequently, I reached out to each one of you and asked what would you like to see accomplished in this committee. So I prepared this document. However, it's a summary. It's very flexible. You can delete, you can add what you feel may be necessary. So, you know, I started off with pretty much our mission statement, as copied right out of the ordinance. And one of the first goals was
Do we have a
keeping,
copy of this document?
yeah, it was included in the agenda packet.
Really?
I did not
You didn't get it?
get,
Yeah, I don't think
I don't believe it made it in.
I don't think I saw it.
Really? Oh, that's not good. Is there any way we can project this or something? I don't know. Well, I don't know how to bring it up to you then.
I'm glad it wasn't just me.
Okay, well, the first item that we suggested was keeping the committee informed on matters related to its charter, obviously, which is very important. So our goal here is to ensure that the committee is regularly updated on matters relating to beach preservation and maintenance that are brought before the City Commission. So as far as the action steps that would require to achieve this, regular staff updates from whoever your staff liaison will be. They would provide routine briefings or summaries of issues related to beach preservation and maintenance that are on the city's commission agenda. So that would require monitoring, I guess, what's put on the agenda to give you a heads up. Remember, the agendas may be published only a week before the meeting.
Nice.
So that's the only way that I would become aware that it's going to be discussed. And then I would have to forward that information to you. But again, that's also available to you anyway, directly, right? So I'm not getting any advanced warning on this being added to the agenda. As far as public meeting agendas go, relevant agenda items should be highlighted and discussed during monthly committee meetings. So again, the frequency that we meet, that's something that has to be determined because we only meet 4 times a year now. And if we want to accomplish these goals, it's going to require a greater commitment. And how much are you willing to commit to do this? What are your thoughts?
I think we need to decide the scope of our plan and then.
And then
That's-
figure out how much
That's
frequency.
a question at the end.
Okay. So these discussions then will ensure that the committee stays involved in ongoing policy debates, information sharing, utilize the city's website, email updates, or other communication platforms to share detailed reports, proposals, analysis with committee members in advance of commission meetings. That's basically what you're trying to achieve. As far as resources, obviously you need a dedicated staff person to help you accomplish this. We've requested for attorney time, any legal staff for reviewing and interpreting policies, ordinances and recommendations, and ultimately the city commission would have to review and approve. You know, just moving forward. The second goal was developing a holistic beach strategy and plan for restoration, renourishment, preservation, and protection of the dunes and beaches. The goal here is to develop a comprehensive beach management plan to ensure the ongoing health, preservation, and improvement of St. Pete Beach. Action steps would be to maybe conduct a full review of the current condition of the beaches, dunes, and overall ecosystem. Engage stakeholders, involve experts from coastal management, environmental science, and wildlife conservation to help craft a strategy that would address restoration and preservation. You recall, I think it was a year ago, exactly February 24, we had the Ocean Alliance come do a presentation for us about looking at a long-term sort of solution to beach preservation. If it's groups like that that you would like to come be involved, then we could invite them. The implementation would require a multi-year strategy outlining specific actions for beach renourishment, restoration, erosion control, and long-term resilience. Monitoring and reporting. Establish clear metrics for evaluating the health of the beach and dunes and the effectiveness of interventions. The resources, again, would be staff, industry experts, the attorney time, and the city commission to, review and approve, and the staff to implement, obviously, the execution of restoration and renourishment projects. The third goal was beach ordinance. The goal here is to review and support the process for the first reading of the new beach ordinance, which already happened on 28th of January, and which addresses key regulatory changes for beach protection and access. The action steps would review and discuss the beach ordinance in detail and highlight key aspects relevant to the committee's objectives, which would be like access, protection measures, and environmental standards. Now, throughout this past year, we've had numerous workshops with the commission, and I've actually lost track of how many we've had. I tried to get a list going, but I mean, this has been an ongoing 3-year process, I believe.
At least.
At least, right,
At
to get
least.
this moving. So it would also probably require consultation with experts to ensure that all aspects of the ordinances are backed by sound environmental, legal, and operational frameworks. And then, someone would need to present these recommendations, provide a summary of the committee's recommendations to the city commission in advance of the second reading, which is going to be taking place on March 10th. Next week. Okay, that's the second reading.
Thank you for that update.
Yeah, we didn't know.
I think the person leading that for the city has been the senior planner, Brendan Berry. So he's been making the adjustments to the ordinance, presenting it to the commission, as you saw previously. So that would be the staff person for that.
Would he be, I've asked this question before, would he be the owner? Or he's the staff lead now, the single point?
Pushing the ordinance through, yes, I believe.
Yeah, I was told he'd be here today to go over, provide the new draft.
I did ask him this morning if he had made any changes and for the second reading, and he said there are some readies, but he's not ready to present that yet to us. So
I'll wait till later to talk about that. Okay.
the same sort of resources would be required, staff and industry experts, the attorney time, commission to review, and of course somebody from the staff to implement these changes. The fourth goal we had was to complete the sea turtle lighting ordinance. adopt the Florida state model, which I believe is underway now. At what point, how far along it is, I don't know. It's probably with legal at the moment, so it may be a good point to ask them where it's at. So our action steps would be to review the state model and ensure it meets the unique needs of St. Pete Beach. Any public consultation, engage with local residents, businesses, and property owners to inform them of proposed lighting changes and gather feedback, and implement a time frame for the phased implementation of new lighting regulations across public and private properties. Same sort of resources, staff, attorney time, city commission, and someone to implement that. The fifth goal I have down here was public beach access, to ensure adequate public access to beaches for both residents, visitors, while maintaining environmental protection standards. The action steps may involve mapping and analysis, identifying all current public beach access points and access their accessibility, safety, and impact on local ecosystems. I did include a map, hope you have that, of what I could find was all our public beach accesses. Did you see that in the package?
Yep.
I saw that, but it was missing some.
Yeah, so that was the latest map I had for all the beach accesses, public beach accesses.
For some that I believe were missing.
Strategic enhancements, based on the analysis, identify opportunities for new access points, improve signage and safety measures, and of course, public engagement, hold public meetings to gather input from residents and visitors regarding access and improved ideas. Same kind of resources that we would need for that. The sixth goal we had was further education opportunities for residents and visitors regarding wildlife, dunes, and beach protection. Increase public awareness of the importance of beach and wildlife conservation with a focus on dune protection and wildlife conservation. So the action steps could include a public awareness campaign, launch a series of educational campaigns focused on preserving wildlife, protecting dunes, and respecting beach ordinances, which I think is one of the campaigns you see now about zero tolerance, right? Collaborating with local organizations, working with local schools, environmental organizations, community groups to create educational programs, workshops, and events. We do collaborate with Keep Pinellas Beautiful, as you know now, for our beach cleanups and things like that. So, outreach material, we could develop accessible, engaging educational material, including brochures, signs, and online content to reach a wider audience. Resources needed for that was staff, commission to review, and someone to implement that. I did include also a timeline to achieve these goals. Again, it would require a lot more time to meet together to discuss all of these things. So, at the conclusion, I just said that this is the Beach Stewardship Committee's goals. They're ambitious, but with careful planning, resource allocation, and collaboration, the committee could achieve meaningful and sustainable outcomes for the preservation and enhancement of St. Pete Beach. Regular communication between staff, industry experts, and the City Commission will be the key to ensuring the success of these initiatives. I wish I had a copy of this for you, which I will get you a copy.
Thanks, Ayako.
Yeah.
I assume you're going to have us just go around. Can I comment on that?
Sure.
So, first of all, I'd like to really commend you on what you put together. I mean, I think that was I'm more of a visual person, but listening to that, I thought that was really a very good capture of a lot of good ideas. And I know I wrote some things to you, and I feel like you really captured a lot of what I wrote, and probably a lot of what other people wrote, or what you've captured in your role of this time. So I really thank you for putting that together. It was terrific. As I thought about it more, I think that we have to do some soul searching in our role, because one of the things that's unique to beach stewardship is we don't do, for instance, a Form 1 or Form 6, or not even a form that talks about whether we've spoken to any influencers. I forget their title. There's a form that you have to fill out if you speak to lobbyists, because we have really no authority. We just talk, and listen to people, but we don't really have any authority whatsoever.
Well, we're an advisory. We don't make the rules, that's the commissioners.
Right.
So-
But when I look at, for instance, even the Historical Commission, they actually approve things. And I started to think about, well, maybe we should be in the middle of something. Maybe the same way people are now applying to them and saying, make my building historic. Maybe we should be in the loop when someone says, hey, I want to put out 500 chairs on the beach. Maybe we should be in the loop in different things, and maybe we have to meet, decide, should we be meeting monthly or 6 times a year? But I'm not saying we should. I'm just saying these are the questions, and if you take on these different responsibilities, then you have to realize you're going to be a Form 1 or Form 6, and is that the role of this group? So that's just one set of questions. The other thing is, how do we communicate with the commission? The commission right now doesn't even think they should ask us questions. We've had meetings, so we don't need to ask again when the new version of the ordinance comes out. They don't ask us. But then also, and I forgot to put it on the agenda, but I'll just say it now, how do we communicate to them? So I've communicated to them a couple times, like when the new ordinance came out, and I said, hey, I have to just speak for myself and tell you what I think about this new ordinance. But then, is that a shade communication? So, because I wrote a letter, and I sent it to them, and then I want to make sure it's not a shade communication, so I sent it to the city clerk. I said, hey, make sure this isn't a shade communication. Make sure this gets out at least into the next agenda or the public documents for this next meeting. But then it only got sent to the other, beach stewards, but it didn't get published. And that made me even more concerned, because that makes it really a shade communication, because I never would send it just to the other stewards. I wanted it to get into the public document that went out for the meeting. So now I'm saying in the record, that wasn't my intent to have a shade communication. I wanted it to be part of the agenda that was published. So I've sent it to the people that have spoken to me from the public and said, hey, I just want you to know, I've sent comments in. So, that's the question, is like, how do we, as stewards, get our information to the commission in a way that makes it not a shade communication, so that we are influencing the commission, and it's a two-way street. So I guess that's my other category. What would be a more effective way? Because right now, I don't think it's working. And that's, maybe it's a rhetorical question, but that's the other thing we have to address. How do they get to us and solicit our input? Because that's not happening. And then how do we, even unsolicited, give them our input, and either individually, or I could have tried to do an emergency meeting, but I was out of town. I didn't know what was happening until, I saw it like Friday, and the meeting was Tuesday, and I didn't even have time to look at it till Monday or Tuesday. Wrote my email before the meeting. They didn't have time to read it, and that was the first reading. How's that? How do we do an ordinance that way? And now I ended up writing them something for this meeting yesterday, because I was trying to find a copy of that ordinance, but I don't want to go into that until the ordinance section. But so it's just really not. We need to come up with a smoother process, and then what else do we want to get our fingers into? But the deeper we get into the process, the more we become more entrenched in the organization and more decision making. We have to be cognizant of that. Thank you.
Right, so I think you're asking for a further expansion of the committee's mission.
I'm saying we have to decide if we do that. If do we want to do that, or should it be appropriate, or should we stay in this role and stay non-authoritative? How far can we go and say say advisory, and be effective? Maybe that's it. How much further can we be effective in a non-authoritative role, but can we make that work? Maybe that's the thing to try.
If I may. I don't disagree with anything you said, but I also look back, excuse me, allergies are just killing me. The scope of our charter is very limited. It's for the overseeing renourishment of our beaches. And I meant to print out it, but it's.
I think John has a copy.
You can have it. Keep me in bounds if I get it wrong. Public renourishment of our public beaches, which the city doesn't really have any say in that. That's done by the county and like that. When we had Paso Grill was getting renourished, we didn't get updated on that, nor in many cases did the city know what the county was doing. So we'll put that aside. And the second one is, and Dan, keep me, Chair, please.
You're right on.
Second one is the preservation and maintenance of our public or city beaches.
Correct.
The way I read that is that's Upham and Paso Grill. The way that's my interpretation of what
I'll respond
a
after.
city public
Yeah.
beach is.
Right.
So when you're talking, chairs and all that, and I know I'm just going off the example you brought, that's not a city public beach, again, in my interpretation of that. So not to be debated here, and maybe it's, in our next step, we should have a workshop or something where we discuss, should we come back with a recommendation to the commission that they may accept or deny of what we think or should our charter stay the same, or should it change? And if it changes, to what? And in that, we can have discussion about advisory versus non-advisory. I don't know when Vice Mayor Mulholland was reaching out, and he used the Beach Stewardship Committee as an example in his, I think it was December 10th or something, where they were talking about work. They were talking about committees and all that. Was it in his mind or the commission's mind in doing that, hey, we just asked the beach committee to reconsider its purpose and its scope and inserting itself into making decisions versus advising decisions. I just don't know if that was the intent of the request for us to come up with goals.
Right.
It could be, or could, they might be open to it or not. I don't know what the process is for us to, hey, are they open for us to reinvent ourselves and potentially put some more bureaucracy in the city in terms of decision making and getting things done, which sometimes that's a good thing and sometimes that's a bad thing. But I would think we need, and it's not something I think we're prepared to, I'm not prepared to decide here, but I would put that as a step. If we're going to do that, we should maybe all call our appointees saying, hey, we had this discussion, do you want us to go down this path? And if they say yes, hey, let's go. If they say no, we stay within the charter. Then we can have a good debate about what preservation and maintenance of, is it the city public beaches?
Yes, it is. It is a city public.
Beaches. We can have a debate about what that means. And then we have to stay in those boundaries. Because right now we have some guardrails.
Right.
And if you look at the beach ordinance, there's a lot of things, in my opinion, that are outside those guardrails that we could give input to, but it's really it's outside of the curbs of this current committee's charter, in my opinion.
But basically, it says that we are to make recommendations to the city, which that's advisory, and that's what it is now.
Yes, if I could, so I don't want to change our charter as written in the statute, because there is actually the ordinances that created us, and I didn't mean to try to step out of those bounds.
So you're saying keep the...
Certainly, I wouldn't want to stay...
Then we can debate what the guardrails are.
Yeah, I would want to stay within the statute as written, but to respond to the public thing, I was thinking about that, and there are plenty of places that are considered public that are privately owned. The whole concept of an easement, and the whole idea that we even were involved in the ordinance, ordinances relate, and the city manages the ordinances, and the ordinances relate to things that are, relate to the whole beach. The tax assessors even told me that, he treats all of the beachfront, all the properties along the beach. He treats them as beachfront and doesn't tax the sandy beach. He treats all the hotels, all those properties as beachfront because he considers them beachfront. He's not taxing the places where the chairs are or anything, just the marshland, because he's treating it as public. So that's, you know, if it's used by the public, that the ownership is a separate question, but you still could consider it a public resource. So that's where, you know.
I would debate it differently.
But okay, that's the guardrails we're talking about.
To me is Paso Grow and Upland Beach.
But
the
it's,
way I read it.
but that's not what was written, which they could have written, so. All right, anyway.
Again, we yield to an attorney to
Yeah.
do that. but
Then the attorneys could probably
the
debate it
brand in front
for
of the
years in
Thomas
court.
Bazaar is not city public beach as a resort conversation. For us to be getting it, for us
That's what they'll probably debate.
it's not city public beach, it's, in my opinion. So
That's the usual and
we can
customary.
go
Yeah.
down
Yeah.
at a workshop, but
Yeah.
for me to agree, we would have to come to some consensus of what
Right.
city public beach. Otherwise, it's the preservation and maintenance of those.
Right, because you have a lot of M&M would be the same question, obviously, and that's, right,
Well, you can go up and down, it doesn't matter to any of it.
okay.
Could I suggest, I know we'll probably be talking about this at the end on your things, but we could move to item 4, because I know we have people here to speak on that. And
I mean, B.
B, yep.
If we are finished with item 4A, can I have a motion that the committee does accept the goals plans as stated?
I'm not prepared, without even having a paper copy of it.
Yeah,
I would-
me neither.
I would be more than happy to schedule a workshop. I'd be willing to participate in a workshop where we go and flush those out and agree. It just, with the administrative mess here, I don't think we're prepared. I don't feel
Okay.
comfortable in
Oh, that's
voting
good.
for that.
Yeah, I'd like to see the input that everyone's, I mean, I mailed my input in. I think maybe other people mailed their input in, and I don't want to have shade communication, so I didn't CC other people, but I'd like to see what the input was from the other people.
We could discuss that in a workshop.
Okay, I mean,
Okay, well, I took all of your input and I produced this document as a
Okay.
summary,
Mine were in there.
so
all right, okay, so then fine, if we're all,
it's included.
if we're all happy, then yeah, let's look at the final version.
Okay.
No, may I suggested we have a workshop and we discuss it. I didn't want to say that, hey, that I agree with that final version. So
I agree.
I would say it's a working session. It's a great start, and thank you for putting
It
it
is.
together.
Thank you, Ayako.
Mhm.
Okay, so that brings us back to 4B. And those people that want to speak.
Okay, I have Joe Smith.
For the record, Joe Smith, 1825 Main Street, Weston, Florida. I'm well aware of the beach ordinance, or actually maybe I'm not, because it seems like I can never get a final copy of what it actually is. And so my ultimate suggestion is that I would really like to have some kind of workshop where we're happy to discuss with you and add whatever input we can from the hotel community. I'm the owner of Tradewinds, if those of you don't know me. Really, I think there's some misguided direction on the beach ordinance that I've seen so far. So, for example, are you aware that the fire department will not drive their vehicles on the beach? So if we're creating setbacks and drive aisles for safety for the public and for those people on the beach, in our CUP process, we are very specifically told the fire trucks, the EMS vehicles will not go on the beach. We actually have to build out hardscape so that our fire trucks can get around our property to get to fires, to service people. Very explicit instructions from the fire department. So if we're trying to solve for drive aisles, there are no drive aisles because it can't be done because no one's driving there. There's no emergency vehicles that are willing to do that in St. Pete Beach. So I think it's very important that we know that. Even if we get to the point that we do have setbacks and there are these drive aisles which don't exist anywhere else in Florida, the problem is what are we going to do? Hire more sheriffs and tax the people more so that we can have sheriffs patrolling up and down the beach to make sure that no one sits in these drive aisles? The only thing I can figure that we can do as a community is put up rope
and stanchions around these areas, which is going to be miserable, right? I mean, I don't want more tension with the residents, but if we start roping off all these huge areas in the beach to make sure that no one sits down in the drive aisles, no one gets out of our areas with alcohol on, service areas, I don't know how this is supposed to work. I don't think any of us know how it's supposed to work. But that's going to result in either a really ugly St. Pete Beach with all the hotels putting rope all over the place, or a request for the sheriff to put more sheriff on the beach that ultimately results in more taxes to the residents. So I'm not sure how this is really supposed to work. I think we need a workshop, and I'm happy to participate in it if I can add some value in this to figure out how we can work together. We do have solutions we'd like to put on the table that we think can help with some of the objectives as we understand them that would be alternate to what's being contemplated in the beach ordinance. I just need to talk to someone. I just don't have anyone to talk to at this point. The unfortunate part that I really don't want to get into, but I think you should know about it, is if you actually do these setbacks, the 15-foot setbacks and the 75, you're talking about losing space that would accommodate 1,200 chairs on the beach, which everyone might say, well, good. The problem is that could result in 150,000 less room nights on the beach, which would be a reduction of over $30 million in hotel revenue. You can figure out the hotel taxes and everything from there. It might result in $10 million less in chair rentals. This is obviously not going to go away, right? No one loses tens of millions of dollars of revenue, and that's just from the large resorts. I didn't even count all of the resorts it would affect. So the problem is I think that before making some kind of advice to the commission, we got to sit down and figure out what the effects are to everyone and really understand the impact, because none of us want lawsuits to the city. Last time there were lawsuits to the city was $12 million in legal fees. This is actually multiple owners. This would be far more than $12 million, and that's not even the hundreds of millions of dollars in damages that may result. I don't want to go there. I really don't. I love St. Pete Beach. We all do things because we want to be here and we want to be united. Unfortunately, some of these things I think are just not fully vetted. Fireworks, we guess, and make sure that we can do fireworks. We do it free for the community, right? As long as it's permitted and the city says, yes, Trade Winds is setting up appropriately and taking the right safety measures, hopefully we can do that. The way I read the ordinance, it looks like maybe no one could do fireworks. I'm worried about things like that. I'm worried about people closing their blinds. There's no way I can control my guests from closing their blinds every night. Now, I am putting turtle tint on the windows, as I call it. So if I put turtle tint, hopefully I'm waived from that requirement. Or I don't know how the other hotels that are smaller that can't afford to spend the $1 million in turtle tint that I'm going to do, I don't know how they can afford to do it. So I'm just really worried about what this means. If you want to know what we want from a beach ordinance, we want no tents, right? We have tents get blown up by the wind, knock into people, both our guests and not our guests, and people get injured, right? And even people, logging, just carrying tents onto the beach, they're hitting people as they turn around with their tents and whacking people, and they're, doing damage to property and people. I think that it's not good for any of us, residents, hotels, whatever, if these big tents are set up. That's something that I don't see in there that I think is really important that we put in there. I think there's lots and lots of things I can go into that really, would be important to consider, but, I don't want to take up, all of your time, but I think it's really important that we sit there and get a workshop going so we can go through all these things. I really, really don't want to resort to some of the alternatives I've mentioned today, but if this is rushed through, like we're all talking about, it's being rushed through. By the way, this is all private beach, right? We have easements that we've given under the CUP that will go into effect soon that we allow people on the beach, but it's still private beach. So I'm not even sure what we're talking about here. Are we talking about, the city government saying on private beach when the, scope of this committee is for public beach? I'm just so confused about what the goal is of this ordinance, what the goal is of this committee, how we can work together and talk about, getting this right. So I would recommend delaying any decisions. We get a workshop going, we sit down. I'm a flexible guy. I know the other hotel folks are flexible people, and I'll chat about what can be done. And if after that workshop you're just really dead set that there's a method and a way forward, then okay, that is what it is. The next steps will unfold. But I think it's really important that we get that workshop going and that there's really no need to rush to a decision on March 10th unless there's some other ulterior motive, which I hope there isn't. And I don't think any of you do, but others in the community may have that. So I appreciate you listening to me. Thank you very much. And again, I'm waiting and available to any workshop that you guys come up with. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I just say one thing? I mean, I appreciate a lot of the things you just said, and whether it's the scope of the committee or not, the city commission, believes that they have the authority to put these ordinances in place. So, whether we're just helping to try to, create a forum or not to discuss these things, and it's in our charter or not, and that may or may not, be appropriate, but the city commission is still trying to make these rules, and so they're the ones that I think really have to hear what you have to say, because they're the ones that have the authority on March 10th to do that second reading.
If that respect is more of a legal one, I understand. However, I think like the fire trucks and EMS not going on the beach, I think that has to be something that this committee contemplates, because if the whole goal, as I understand, is to create drive aisles for safety, right? That's what I've been told, right? The setbacks create drive aisles so you can put emergency vehicles on the beach. This is what the mayor has said, so that you can access people in trouble, in danger, heart attack or whatever on the beach. The problem is the fire department won't do that. They will come out, obviously, and walk out and address someone, but you don't need drive aisles if they're going to walk out to the beach. So the whole premise behind the intent of the setbacks is basically void.
Are you referring to the ones between the properties that go out?
I'm told, and correct me if you have a different understanding, I'm told that creating setbacks in between lots creates space, which would be like a drive aisle where a ambulance or a fire truck could drive out on the beach, get closer to the person in distress, and be able to treat them more effectively. The problem is I don't know anywhere else in the state of Florida that does this, number one. I don't know how we enforce it, right? Because even if you have those setbacks, like, what am I supposed to do? Someone sits there and I'm supposed to call the sheriff and say, hey, someone's on your drive aisle, come and get them off? Because they're going to be angry with me, right? If I go to them and say, hey, you need to move, even though I might be fine with it. It's my property, but I might say, you know what, just leave them alone. Just let them enjoy their afternoon. I can't do that anymore, because now this has put me in a position where I have to call the sheriff. I have to remove them. And then I'm going to start saying, look, it's costing me additional labor monitoring this. I need just more sheriff on the beach to monitor it yourself, because this is the city's ordinance. Then that's more sheriff, and there's more, and I pay taxes too. I'm just paying for it also, right, along with the residents. So I think there are alternate ways. Like, I mean, I think we should be working together on maybe a hardscape that goes up and down the beach, like a beach walk, that can be used by fire trucks and ambulances. I'm doing it as part of my CUP. I think that's a bigger solution to getting in emergency vehicles to better access everyone, guests and the public, than it is creating drive aisles on sand that the fire department has very clearly said they won't use and they won't go on. I mean, they were very, very clear with us, to the point like, we need to design and spend money to make sure that they don't go on sand, not even an inch. So I just think, look, just that one premise alone, I think makes us all rethink about what are we doing here. And maybe I just don't understand. I mean, do you all have a different understanding what the setbacks are for?
I know we're not supposed to do a question and answer, but I wasn't even sure that was the sole reason for I hadn't even heard them referred to as drive outs. I just thought they were, separators, so that they were, but I think a point you did make was that I think that for every action, there's a reaction. And just like you pointed out that you'd have to put ropes around things, I think it's very enlightening for you to explain what the reaction would be to some of these things in our ordinance, and having a constructive conversation for us to understand what the impact would be of some of the things in the ordinance, so that we can make sure that the city commission understands what those impacts might be, and maybe would adjust.
By the way, I would talk to residents of Seamark and places like that, because if they start understanding there's swaths of beach that are left with, we can't put seats on them, can't service them, I believe that they won't be happy. Because why? Because remember, I have a bus stop right out my property. To them, that could mean like this is turning into Upham Beach, which for them, that's a bad thing, right? They don't want big swaths of empty beach that I can't control. that now is accessible to a bus stop. And they're like, no, I mean, they've told me this. They like their private beach. They don't want us sitting on the beach, and we have made sure that our guests do not sit on their beach. But what we're doing, if we don't rope it off, is creating these like kind of vacuous areas that I don't really have authority of. The sheriff time to react is dangerously slow. And all of a sudden we're creating this like no man's land, which is, I think, just dangerous. And I don't think the residents that are on the beach want stuff like this, is my guess. Again, I would do maybe like a study and talk to people, but I realize it's not a Q&A session, so I appreciate the conversation. But look, again, maybe in a different format, in a workshop, it can be more of a Q&A. We can talk, and again, during the CUP, I think you all saw, I gave like public areas and vista areas for the public and private elevators for the public. I did all kinds of things. So we're really flexible in trying to address an objective. I just think that I haven't heard, especially the comments today, I haven't heard what the objective is. So I'm scratching my head saying, how can we go forward or recommend going forward with the ordinance if none of us are clear what the objective is? That's to me is kind of 101.
What did you say your relationship was with the trade winds?
I own it.
So, wow. I mean, here we have the owner of the trade winds coming to a beach stewardship meeting. I mean, I think this sort of shows us the importance of this ordinance to the trade winds and the importance of working together here. So, I mean, I really appreciate, I really want to thank you for coming, and I think that, I hope that the city, you know, I'm just trying to figure out how can we make sure that we are having this dialogue. I mean, I don't know if this is the meeting to have it, or how do we just make sure that we move forward?
I mean, I'll tell you, like in the CUP, the city was worried about the lack of visibility from Gulf Boulevard to the beach. And I came to the solution of doing a rooftop, public, accessible area that everyone could come and enjoy and get better views than from Gulf Boulevard, and it would be accessible by the public. That's a solution that no one saw on the table. But those type of solutions we can work on and say, hey, tell me what the objective is, and maybe I have a solution. You go, wow, that's better than what we were asking for. But I don't know because I don't know the objectives. But if we talk openly about the objectives, I'm sure we can brainstorm about better ways to make it a safer beach if that's the objective. Or if the objective is, hey, making sure that there aren't drunken, disorderly behavior on the beach, I'm for that. I don't want people drinking on public beach either. I mean, selfishly, that's better for my business, right? I serve on my private beach. So we're aligned more than you might think, and I don't think maybe a lot of people out there understand that. We just need to communicate, and we bring that alignment together and come up with creative solutions.
Right, because I think that's where the residents, I think, are sort of stuck in the middle, because, the hotels have always provided a service in a way of maintaining decorum, and at the same time, now, you have to have the defensive measures that you don't want public drunkenness, but, then you try to say, well, we don't want, a lot of people, I've gotten feedback, they want to be able to have a drink on the beach sometimes, but, now we're trying to do things and say, well, zero tolerance, and we have all these different things that are going on because we're trying to avoid one extreme. But when
And can you imagine how angry the residents?
Chairman, can I have a point of order?
Point of order, yes.
We kind of broke protocol with not sticking to 3 minutes, and also our atypical discussion. That doesn't diminish anything
Sorry.
I just heard.
Apologize.
We also have a timetable,
Yeah,
and
I
many other
apologize.
people that would
All right.
like to speak. And I think we need to be fair with the others that will follow, but
Yeah,
we need to move on. And
my apologies.
I
We
didn't
can-
mean to take your time, I'm sorry.
No, my apologies. We can discuss in a different format. I apologize. But last thing I'll say is, imagine how angry the residents would be if I have to register all of them and put a band on their wrist because they just want to come in the trade winds for a drink. They just want to walk across the street and have a drink at trade winds. Now I have to register them? Like, why do you need my information? I'm like, the city requires me. There's a lot to work on here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
if I echo, there was one thing he said that I remember differently. I unfortunately witnessed a individual having a heart attack on the beach. There were several police squads in their full SUVs that responded, and the medics actually came in on a gator with a gurney or whatever you call it, and when they showed up, took over from the police and CPR and all of that. What he said that what Can you find out what the fire department would use when they're responding? Are they using gators, or do they bring their EMS vehicles?
So they do have a marine unit, so they have a boat, and I do believe they have a gator of sorts to tow a trailer, and probably, longboards and stuff that they'll use for their marine rescues. But I do know that the smaller trucks are able to get out onto the beach.
I just wanted, that's the first, I witnessed something different. I saw police units and, EMS there on a, I think it was a gator. But I would like to know for sure what is their policy. And
Yeah.
that should inform, the safety and access. But I do know that the police were there in their cruisers
Right.
because they were actually there first. And they do bring their cars
Right.
and need access.
And I've seen
Sheriff.
SUVs just driving, patrolling on full-size
That's
SUVs.
what I meant by cruising.
Yeah, so the sheriff's able to get out there, the smaller EMS fire trucks are able to get out
Because
there.
that was the first I had heard that. Okay. Sorry, we can continue.
Okay.
The next comment I have is Travis Johnson.
Good morning.
Travis Johnson for the record, representing 5500 Gulf Boulevard through 6000. I'm not the owner of Tradewinds, but I have been part of the management group for 25 years. So I'll save you a little bit of time since my boss here took a lot of it. But
It's very informative.
yeah, first I want to thank you for your service here. Obviously, this is an important issue. I hope everything that you bring up to the commission is heard. It's a shame if that's not the case. The mayor made a comment at the commission meeting that after public comment that you guys need to speak up. We've been speaking up on this issue for 2 years, as many of you know, right? Countless hours. We were talking today, both properties are sold out, yet we're here again spending time on this issue. As Joe mentioned, it's just not fully ready to go, right? There's a lot of in the proposal that we agree with, but there's a lot that hasn't been well thought out. So Joe's comment about a workshop is a great one. There's most of which, again, we agree that we can support, but things like moving every item off the beach daily is not the right thing to do. That is going to do more damage. We've given some suggestions about maybe moving it back, but that constant, many properties don't even have an area to put this or a lane to get these items off the beach, right? And as you know, we have 1,000 rooms, so we got a lot of chairs. That's a big one. And then this escalated from, we were collaborating and talking through turtle season, and then all of a sudden it went into above and beyond turtle season. Why? At the meeting, no logical reason was given as to why, right? Other than somebody wants this to happen, and unfortunately folks are following that, right? And so we just want reasonable, the beach is our number one resource, right? It's the backbone of our community. We want rules. We want to help support those rules, right? We're a steward of the community, but they have to be reasonable. They have to be logical. I ask of you to bring this message up and be heard to the commission to make sure that we're getting that. A reality, I'm coming on the beach today. I'm sure you've seen this, right? We're welcoming people back. We're rebuilding. A lot of properties are open. And what's our message? A flashing DOT sign saying, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, or you'll get arrested or cited. Mom is watching at our property, their children build a sandcastle. They step out 1 foot outside of a zone, and they're going to get cited for drinking a pina colada. Like, come on, guys, what are we doing? Why are we doing that? Setbacks, what's the reasoning? We're all about making logical movement forward and working together and collaborating, but oh man, a lot of this just doesn't make any sense. And there's no reasons that have been given to us that make sense, right? Joe touched on a lot of other items. I would just end with this. We need to be very careful, right? There are a lot of options out there. We have been award-winning beaches. We have visitors, fortunately, flocking to our destination for many, many years. What I've seen in the last few weeks, even with the enforcement that unfortunately has been pressured to happen, they're going to go elsewhere. And talk about economic impact. What about when they go to the other communities and other destinations in Clearwater Beach and Treasure Island and Madeira Beach, right? So let's just be very reasonable. I beg of you to use some logic and to pass that message up the chain. Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you again for your service.
Thank you.
Ed Sheed.
Morning, guys.
Good
I'm Mitch
morning.
Sheets, 517 76th Ave, representing Postcard Inn 6300 Gulf Boulevard. A couple things for clarification, since I have been working there for a while. Yes, police SUVs are allowed on the beach, four-wheel drive. Gators are allowed on the beach for four-wheel drive. Fire trucks and ambulances will sink and will not get out. We have our easement to allow all that EMS and basically all the police to get out there. Then they use their gators, and then part of our thing for our setback is an SUV, a gator, a fire truck, ambulance. They're all about 8 feet wide. So a 30-foot wide zone in between every property really only just crunches in, especially the small properties. We're lucky to have enough to have a pretty big footprint. Other properties aren't so lucky. So the 15 feet, which they did discuss, bumping it to every property makes it 30 feet, which is a pretty large space. Same thing with the 50 to 75. All that does is just shrink people's footprints, shrinks down revenue you can have, no more weddings on the sand, no more anything, and just to have an open area. We've been running it for the past couple of years with 50, plenty of room for the police to patrol, plenty of room for everyone to go by, no issues really that we've seen on our side. So the second thing would be the removal of the chairs. Last year we worked, we bought Postcard Inn, the ownership did a couple years ago. So when we got in, it's basically a new team. So we worked with the city, we worked with the commission, the Turtle Commission, to have a plan for us, because we can care for the beach. Our plan, which we implemented, was to pull the chairs back, stack all the chairs every night, pull them back, not all the way off, but back basically to kind of keep that open area. And then the cabanas. Cabanas are a safety. We anchor them, we drill them into the sand to make sure that they don't fly away like these tents do. So that was our plan. Turtle Commission endorsed it for us. We operated like that. Anything like to take all that work and then move it another 300 feet basically into our parking lot, because there's no other place to store this stuff, just as a hardship. We consulted with our Suncoast Water Sports. For our property alone, you're looking at another $150,000 in payroll. Just payroll, not to mention the lost sales, because also we have a set time to operate, 9 to 5. Sunset comes down, people get off the beach, now you're working in the dark, now you're running heavy machinery, now you're up in the sand, you're leaving holes that you now have to, in the dark, pack. We just think that it's just not common sense. What we would love to see, because we look at the site map, we have a 75-foot easement for people to walk through. We don't have the concern of, the public can't get on our beach. We have a huge lane for it. What we would like to see is individualized site plans for each property, because every property is different. We're different. We're not trade winds. We only put out 100 chairs a day. 26 cabanas, 100 chairs, and then we add more as we see fit. Now, to bring that back to zero, all that's going to do is just create a huge line in our beach. We're not going to be able to help our guests. And each time a guest comes up, well, now you're waiting for whoever's in front of you, whoever's in front of you. Because it does take time to drill down a cabana for you to sit into, or pull out 2 chairs. So we just hope there's common sense site plans for everything. We would love the setbacks to be 15 feet and 50, and just keep the beach rolling and get us back to work. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
I apologize. I think this says Sean.
Good morning. I'm Sean Kukowski, 5250 Gulf Boulevard. I am, the managing director for Bellwether and Beachcomber Resorts. I think you've heard today, if you watched the City Commission meeting on January 28th, you would have heard it. Us as a hotel group, there's some frustration here, and it's really about the communication two-way, or lack thereof, right? Joe mentioned it, Travis mentioned it, but I want to dig into that a little bit more, and I kind of felt some frustration on your side, too, of not really knowing the information of the beach ordinance, right? So I rewatched the City Commission meeting this morning, right? And I wanted to make sure I had these facts straight. So June 2024, there's a workshop. I don't know who was involved in that workshop for the beach ordinance. At least my properties weren't. I don't think the hotels were. On 11/12/2024, there was a St. Pete Beach business meeting. I was at that meeting. Nothing mentioned about a beach ordinance. No communication regarding that. On 11/13, I think you guys had a beach stewardship meeting. I didn't watch that, but I didn't see the beach ordinance on the agenda. On 1/28, we had a first reading. So that kind of blindsided us as a hotel group, so we had to react quickly. The only opportunity we have to speak is this forum right now. right? So I have 6 minutes, 3 minutes at the first ordinance reading, 3 minutes here, and then maybe 3 more minutes at the second, but it could get past that time. 9 minutes, and it's not two-way communication. That's what we're asking for, is two-way communication and find a resolution. I think, Mr. Kurzman, you mentioned it to Elise, we need to sit down and talk as a group, and we can find a solution. But since the first reading, we haven't had an opportunity to speak outside of public comment. The setbacks. So again, what's the public purpose for that? We heard about EMS. Think about if we currently space our cabanas and our seating areas because we want safety access. We can't put them on top of each other. But if we squeeze those setbacks, we're forced to squeeze our chairs even closer. So now it's a double-edged sword. We're not creating space because we don't have enough seating as it currently is. The business impact, as we study, as we know, there's a business impact study happening right now, has to be presented before the 310. What is that business impact reading? No one has talked to us about how should we look at this. What's the financial metrics? What is hotel occupancy? What is the guest survey? There's a lot of stuff in a business impact to tell us what the business impact is without speaking to us and giving an opportunity for input. That's a challenge. Now, we do have a meeting on this Friday with Fran to go through that, so that's great. Keep in mind there's 5 days until the next reading. How can that be adjusted, the feedback given from us, and an accurate business impact study being done? And then, my main recommendations would be, again, meet with us. We want to have two-way communication. This is a great opportunity, but again, it's not two-way. We'll find a solution. We want to find a solution. We have to look at this on an individual site plan basis. Every hotel is different. It absolutely is. My hotels are very skinny. It's really going to restrict my hotels and ultimately my revenue. And then also take a look at the guest room blinds language. It's crossing guest privacy issues if we have to go in and close the blinds at night. Doesn't make sense. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Kristen Simmons?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Kristen Simmons. I'm the Director of Catering and Sales for Postcard Inn on St. Pete Beach. Thank you for speaking with us today and hearing our concerns. One of the first statements that I would like to make is just, instead of positioning our hotels and cities as separate entities in the management of the beach resources, I really encourage a beach stewardship partnership where we can redefine how both parties collaborate on sustainable beach management and our guest experiences. And this could allow us to enhance that turtle protection efforts that we are trying to present, and as an opportunity for hotels to align with the city on these common goals. Another point that I would like to make is that we could tailor regulations to the different hotel needs by, not all hotels are the same. Their proximity to the beach, their guest experience offerings are even different. So could we create an adaptive beach zoning that would allow those regulations to be based on those hotels' specific operational needs? And that way the location of their property is considered. It's not a one-size-fits-all. Another thing to consider is, with the 750-foot setback, how that could impact our weddings, which is, a thriving portion of our revenue on our beach, and how that would impact in taxes. I mean, if 100 weddings alone, just in small food and beverage minimums, we could have a $1.5 million impact just from those weddings alone moving to another beach. I would like to provide an update on kind of what we're doing at our property now. We have actually opened up our beach access, so we've created a safe zone so that people are able to go from Gulf Boulevard down to the beach. I'm hearing great feedback that the residents are very excited to have that access back as well. And we're also maintaining and cleaning the beach on a daily basis, even though we are not currently open or servicing food or alcohol at our property. So we definitely do align on a lot of our missions, and we would just like to, as you've heard repeatedly, to have a voice in that, in consideration of what our hotels would like to do to kind of create that bond with the city and the residents to create a great experience for our guests and our residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
I cannot read this first name. Looks like Harvey.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Parker Harvey. I'm the Director of Rooms for the Don Cesar, 3400 Gulf Boulevard. I tried to send this letter last night to Ayako. Unfortunately, the St. Pete Beach website still links to C Mills when you click on your email address.
Oh,
So I sent it, I figured it out, I think, and sent it to you this morning.
okay.
I'm going to read a few portions of a letter from James Boucher, the president of Boucher Brothers. They manage our beach operations at the Don Cesar and the Beach House Suites. They have 36 years of beach operational experience here in Florida. Our primary concern in reviewing the new Chapter 95 is the safety issues be considered in the final drafting of the city's new rules. Based on our extensive experience, we know that the more times during the day and greater the distance we have to move the equipment, the greater the chances there for accidents to occur and injuries to happen to our employees and patrons. This is especially true when the beach is already occupied and the chance for children and others to knock into equipment. That is why we respectfully ask that any new rules not prevent us from pre-setting up equipment on the private hotel beaches in which we operate, and allow us to store beach equipment in a designated area on the beach overnight that hasn't been approved by the city staff, storing in place. Hotels are currently permitted and have been allowed for at least the last 10 years to pre-set up beach chairs, loungers, and amenities for hotel guests on the beach front directly adjacent to the hotels, and to reset equipment neatly and secured in place, with the exception of beach umbrellas, which are placed nightly in umbrella boxes located in the beach area. This process allows equipment to be available for the hotel's visitors and guests with minimal movement, displacement, and most importantly, traffic back and forth on the sand from the staging area to the designated amenity areas of the beach area. The current process allows employees to avoid setup before the temperature rises significantly, allows employees to avoid walking back and forth across the sand with heavy equipment, which has the potential to create damage to the beach itself, and allows staffing at the beach area appropriately while operating in a fiscally responsible manner. Cities and municipalities, which have moved from a pre-set-up process to a single use, saw a significant uptick in employee injuries related to the increased operational tempo that is required under the single-use process, including an increase in heat-related injuries related to these operations, which were not consistent with other similar properties we service, which were located less than a mile away from the single-use operations. This is why the city of Hollandale, Florida, abandoned plans for single setup last year, following a beach renourishment effort after contemplating such change, deciding instead to return to allowing pre-setup to avoid significant disruption to the patron's beach experience and less degradation of the beach itself. In addition, moving equipment while patrons are already visiting the beach and occupying loungers and sand chairs has the potential to create a situation where an accident or injury could occur. Finally, the single-use process requires a significant increase in staffing, which was not sustainable for long-term operations. As a result, when confronted with the realities and dangers of single-use programs, all municipalities have allowed a return to pre-set-up operations. So, thank you very much. And Akayo, if you could, Yako, I'm sorry,
Yes.
if you could forward the letter to the rest of the Beach Stewardship Committee.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for your time. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Leslie Price. Rob Cezanne.
Good morning, Robert Cezanne, Plaza Beach Hotel, 4506 Gulf Boulevard. Our family's owned this hotel since 1988. The property's been there since 1951, and we have always welcomed our neighbors onto our property. We have no issue with that, except for when they're encroaching on things that we don't want them to do. For example, setting up a tent by tent in front of our cabanas. So our guests are the ones that are paying the high dollars to stay at the hotel. Our guests are visiting from other parts of the world. They want to enjoy the beach. They want to see a beach. By you guys enforcing, not you guys, by the commission enforcing a 75-foot setback from the front, we're now limited to where we can put those cabanas. If we were able to put those cabanas further up front, then we can allow for some tents or the residents to go behind the cabanas, because it should be the people that are paying the most money get the front view, as opposed to the other way around, where we're having the cheap seats in the back and the more expensive seats in the front. So that's an issue altogether. In addition to the 15 feet setback on each side, my property is only 136 feet wide. 136 feet wide, yeah. So taking 15 feet from one side, 15 feet this side is 22% of my property. That's a lot. So imagine somebody coming to your property, looking at your home, looking at the survey, and say, we're taking 22% away from your property. So put yourselves in my position, and what would you do? You won't go down. You wouldn't just stand still. You would fight that. So we are fighting it. I am fighting it. So if this passes on March 10th, I will fight it, and I will fight it to the death, without a doubt. And it will be lawsuits. So I want to encourage this group here, as Dan said, you guys are advisors, advise the commission not to go forward with this, to make more time to really evaluate this ordinance, because this is a very big ordinance. If it does pass on March 10th, I'm not threatening, I'm just saying the facts. I am going to fight it. Just like you would fight it if somebody attacked your home and your family, you would fight it. I am going to fight it. And we, the hotels, my hotel, and I'm sure the other hotels will join, we have hundreds of millions of dollars to fight this, hundreds. The city themselves doesn't have that kind of funds. They don't have the funds to rebuild the fire station. They had the opportunity to buy Lido Park. Lido Park was for sale for 5 years. I ended up buying it for $3 million cash. I have that kind of cash. I've got more cash. So the city could have done it and could have had parking for the residents, but they chose not to buy it. The Beach Haven just sold last month. Beach Haven sold for $6.5 million. If the city was really concerned about beach parking and beach access, they should have bought the Beach Haven. That would have been a golden opportunity for the city to buy a property, have more beach for the residents, but the city continues to fail us. And that's the problem with this commission. The mayor continues to fail us, Lisa continues to fail us. There are certain people in this district that are failing us, and that's unfortunate. So I urge you guys to advise the commission to table this so we have more time to come together and figure out a solution. Forcing things on us is not the way to do it. Sitting down and negotiating is the way to do it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
This is the last card. Brad Cochran.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. Brad Cochran, 5300 Gulf Boulevard, Serrata Beach Resort. Again, as a lot of statements, excuse me, as statements have been made, you know, I'm talking about the removal of the cabanas daily, nightly off the beach, onto the beach. Currently, the way we handle those beach chairs is we stack them nice and neatly. They're locked up at nighttime. Very little impact. Guests or non-guests, beachgoers cannot come out to our beach, take a chair, move it off the beach. Think of the impact that moving 200 chairs, 50 umbrellas, cabanas on and off the beach daily. We talk about sustaining our beaches and the dunes and what that looks like. Think about what the impact is of moving all that heavy equipment on and off the beach. Again, it's not just a danger to the guests, it's a danger to the associates, and it's also a danger to the residents who would be coming and going to the beach. Then we think about the economic impact, right? The economic impact isn't just the Serrata and what it costs us. The economic impact are the guests of the Serrata that come and go to a lot of other places on the beach, in St. Pete Beach, whether it be a restaurant, Publix grocery store, a retail clothing store. All of these things are what our guests at the Serrata come to go to the beach to. Think about, I don't think anybody's thought of the economic impacts that these decisions with this new beach ordinance are going to cause. Our guests like to come out, you know, it was also mentioned that, you know, we can only put out beach chairs on demand. Guests don't want to, as was previously mentioned from someone else, guests don't want to come out and stand there and wait in line to go to the beach. No different than they don't want to wait and if we had to set up our pool deck the same way. They like to come out, they like to sit down, they like to be ready to go to the beach. Think about the summertime, it gets hot. Who wants to stand in the hot sand in the middle of the summertime? Again, we put out small rows of chairs at a time. We don't set the entire beach up. I think all of these things need to be taken into effect. Again, I talked about the locking our beach chairs up at night. There was a mention of the film on the windows. You know, we've been asked by the city to do several things, whether it's lighting, the film on the windows. I believe the film on the windows that we put in place was well over $100,000 at the Serrata. The limit was to have, for the film, was to allow no more than 45% light out. We took that a step further and set it at 27. So our windows only allow 27% out. But a lot of times, you know, these things that I just spoke to you about are not taken into effect. It's always, well, what is the hotel not doing? What about the things that the hotels are doing for the city? And at the end, you know, as a business, I'm not the owner, but as a general manager, every decision I make at the hotel, we have to think about all the impacts, right? The logistic impacts, the economic impacts. We think about all those things before you, and I just think that this new beach ordinance is being rushed. It has wide impacts for a lot more than just the hoteliers on the beach. So I thank you for your time today and appreciate you allowing me to speak.
Thank you.
I would like to say that I have considered, when I've gone and observed the beach, for instance, that I've looked at the Serrata and used it as an example of where the chair model has worked, because I've seen oftentimes not many empty chairs out there. So that was the model that I saw work, where it seemed that the only people that had their chairs out were people that, you know, wanted them, and that perhaps it was when hotels bundled chairs with rooms, or where people, just in human nature, because if the chairs were free with their room, would just call each morning and say, you know, tomorrow I'm going to want a chair. And so the chairs would just sit out there empty all day if they were bundled free with a room. And so I think that what's happened, if we're looking at what the problem is that I think the city is trying to solve, it's a sea of empty chairs that are just always out at a hotel that's caused the desire to try to reduce the number of chairs. If we're trying to, you know, honestly talk about what problem is trying to be solved. I mean, I think it's just terrific that there's people from all these hotels here, and I'm just trying to throw out what's there. I think I've read in some of the documents that have gone back and forth that if hotels have, you know, tint on their windows that's of the sufficient type, that is supposed to be an exclusion to not require the blinds to be closed. You know, the blinds being closed as if a hotel doesn't have that. I also, and you know, this is part of these shade documents that I said where I've written letters to the commission, and I wanted to make sure they were public. You know, we talk about that there's been, you know, this has been going on for 3 years. Well, you know, we had many meetings and we provided a lot of input to the legal staff and to the staff that was here that was going to provide updates to the ordinances that I still don't see in the ordinances. And I think I wrote a letter, and the letter that went to the other beach stewards, and I sent it to the city commission when I found out they were doing the first reading. And it was a reminder of all the things that were in the public record that were sent in as comments to earlier city commission meetings or earlier beach stewardship meetings, of all the comments to the earlier drafts of this ordinance. And it was all of these past communications about how people didn't want to bring in their chairs, and all these comments before on a lot of the things that people have spoken about today. And it was a reminder, but of course the city commission probably didn't get my email in time because, again, it was short notice for the first reading. But for that and many other reasons, I would like to make a motion that we do, as a city, as a beach stewardship committee, suggest or request to the city commission that they consider shelving the beach ordinance temporarily until we can have what I would call a town hall. And I'm calling it a town hall because in the past at our workshops, we told the public they could not speak at a workshop, that a workshop was when we just had our own discussion, that this actually be a town hall where we have a constructive discussion with the public, or with some even subset of the public, maybe as even the hoteliers at this point, to talk to them constructively and discuss the issues and how we can work together to focus on their area of what needs to be done. Because maybe we also have solutions that are separate and that don't affect Pass Grill. This maybe is just a large resort district discussion of what needs to be done.
Discussion?
I mean, I definitely feel that there needs to be more conversation before a second reading. I don't know what the second reading is going to look like. And as a committee, I mean, I can individually email all the commissioners and tell them what I've heard today and what the concerns are, or we could as a group try to have a workshop where we as a group discuss. I don't really know. Things are very rushed at this point, and sometimes when things get rushed, they miss things, I feel. But I do know also that I'm new to this committee, but this beach ordinance has been a 2 or 3 year process. So there has to be an end in sight. It can't just continue to go. I feel that our responsibility here, to me, has been to protect and preserve. And so when I look at different things, my question is, how does this affect the nesting sea turtles, which we know is, certain months of the year? And how does this affect the dunes? So there are things in this document that are going to affect both of those. So I think those are the areas that we can focus on our recommendations. As far as regulating how many chairs and how much is, what's the tax for that, that's just not really, I don't know how that's preserving the beach necessarily. Those are just regulatory measures that are really out of our scope.
Well, I should just add that there was a plethora of mistakes that I reviewed with Mr. McConnell that are still not even corrected. Where, for instance, even with regard to the birds, they literally crossed out the word "or beaches" from where you're not allowed to feed the birds. And they just seem to have not paid attention to how our chapters are organized. Someone got the idea that where they were trying to consolidate, they just removed the word beach from any other chapter. So the alcohol chapter, the birds chapter, even the dunes chapter removes the word beaches from critical parts. So this was really done haphazardly, and I've gotten to the point where I've suggested that the new attorneys might want to just really look this over and write it their way, because the way this was redlined, they did not just change the chapter number to say it's no longer the parks chapter, it will now be the beach chapter and make it chapter 95. They cut and pasted the text, and so everything in the whole section was crossed out and everything in the new section was underlined. And when they did that, they changed words. And when they did that, you can't tell what words they changed. I went through it carefully, saw what they changed, and they actually made small changes that I think were in many cases mistakes. Some of them might have been deliberate changes. Some of them may have been inadvertent changes. When I look at them, I don't think that people realize some of those changes that were made with regard to dunes. Now all of a sudden you can start rigging things with machines you weren't allowed to before. I don't think that was deliberate. So there's a lot of things in here that I think we're taking away protections that were not intended to be taken away. So I really think that there's things that really need to be looked at very carefully. And for those are some of those other reasons that I was mentioning that this should be looked at. And I haven't had time to do the new redlining because I can't even get a new version of this in Word to start comparing what the current version is to look at, because the first reading wasn't available to the public because they had a different version that they were looking at the City Commission than what was in the agenda. And I only got that copy 2 days ago. So I haven't had time to look at that yet.
I'm torn on it. So first, we use words and rush and like that, but we've also, I've only been on the commission a year, or this committee for a year, but was involved like that. The conversation has been going on for years. So I get the one side of it is, hey, we've been talking about this for years. What are you doing? This isn't rushed. This shouldn't be a surprise to anybody like that. So I get that point. I also realize that we've gone through the process between our last official workshop and this. We've gotten a new attorney. We've been hit by 2 hurricanes. in that, and in that handoff, there's been some administrative things that you just highlighted in great detail about what's going on. I'm not an attorney, nor do I play one on TV. As I always look at these, is we should be working with the attorney staff in making, here is the intent of what we want to solve, and then they put it into language that's appropriate for an ordinance that will hold up in court. Sometimes, you know, in my work in this in the last year, and I'll say it to, I think the commission and us, we got into wording versus intent. So that's just one observation. And now I think that the new attorney staff was directed, hey, let's get things, we got to start getting things done again. This has been going on for years. They did a job, and the presentation that's in here is probably the best presentation that I've seen. So I'll give them kudos for that. But I also agree that because of the churn that has happened, another opportunity for comment from both residents, business, and us as a committee I would be comfortable in recommending that. Now, I am not recommending that this goes on for another 3 years. I pull my fingernails out. It's kind of like the turtle light. We were assigned to get that done, and we got 0 with that. That aside. So I think between, you know, I would be willing to, you know, for us to discuss even potentially making a motion that, hey, for what we heard here, we have businesses that would like another opportunity to be heard. And, you know, I have I went through the new draft and I've marked it up. I have no intentions of us going through line by line here.
Not yet.
Now that I actually know we have an owner this time, and Brandon's it, you know, I will send him which he may or may not take. I'd be doing it as a member, but not for the committee, might like that. But I think with all of that, making sure that we recommend that the city be as transparent as possible with where we're at, get another cycle of comment in, and there's still, no one's going to be happy with everything in it. And that's where, you know, maybe a negotiation, but there are things that will go in this that you may or may not like, and we're going to have to deal with that. And then, you know, I won't use the word threats, but enthusiasm for, hey, we're going to fight this, you know, that's a part of the process. But I think we need to make sure, at least the city needs to be as transparent as possible. One more thing of feedback, and then take that and then move forward with a second reading or finalization with that. I would time box that into a few months, not 6 months or a year. I would, not that we get to recommend terms and duration, but that's mine. But I'm really torn, right? We've been talking about this as a city for years.
I think the one thing
it's time to get something done, but I do believe it needs to be done in a way that's transparent, and not everyone's going to be happy with it.
I agree with you.
Yeah, I think it's important that we, like you said, we think about what we're trying to accomplish. And I think we also have to relate it to some of the other things that are going on, like this new, at the same time, they just came up with this new code enforcement ordinance that they're reviewing.
Which we have on the agenda.
No, not the zero tolerance initiative pilot that they're doing. They also have an ordinance that's about to go to second reading for code enforcement, which is that, like, second strike, you lose your ability to sell liquor on the beach for 6 months. So it's a whole code enforcement thing that's going to add new teeth to everything. So instead of warnings, you know, it's changing things. So when a lot of the ordinances were done originally, people said, well, you know, don't worry about it. You know, it's still, the sheriffs don't really, you know, they use judgment. Well, this new code enforcement rule is saying, no, We don't want to do warnings because tourists take advantage of the fact that we do warnings, because they're only tourists, so they know the word's gotten out that they do warnings. So now we want to start enforcing. And so now we have to really also rethink our ordinances, because now we have to realize there's a new philosophy. And so that's another reason we have to rethink our ordinances a little, perhaps, because if now the enforcement model changes, you might want to rethink how you write your ordinances, because now you don't have that luxury that we had before for our ordinances. Not to confuse it, but when you change your philosophy of enforcement, you might have to change your philosophy of how you wrote your ordinances.
I don't know if I agree with that. You got a rule, and there's consequences. Just because there's consequences, I wouldn't change the rules.
Well, but we changed the consequences.
But that's you were saying, if I may, hey, we should go back, look at the rules, because now we're going to hold them accountable for the rules.
Because they said, don't worry about the consequences.
I don't know if I agree with that.
I didn't agree with it at the time, but they said, don't worry. But, okay, yeah. Anyway, so we have a motion on the table to either as a group, or I said it as a group, that we I don't know who would actually write something like that. When we do a motion, is it that the clerk or IOCO would write something to the city commission? How would that go if we actually did a motion?
You would formulate your motion, I would need a second, and then I could prepare these minutes and send them to the city commission.
Okay.
So the motion was that we...
I'm going to consider a motion to postpone the reading, or have.
Yeah, I'll go back to language I used is, I think we should advise the commission that we believe that an additional round of feedback from the community be considered before passage of the beach ordinance.
That's perfect.
Can that be the move? So I make, John, if I may?
Please, go ahead.
I make a motion that we advise the commission to consider an additional round of public feedback before is it the second reading is the final? Before the second reading of the beach ordinance.
And perhaps the ordinance be made available to them.
Well,
or maybe not.
I'm not going to put that in the motion.
Right.
I'm trying to,
Another
high level,
succinct.
I'm trying to be succinct here.
Okay.
So I make a motion that we advise the commission to provide one more round of feedback from the community, business and residents, before the second reading of the beach ordinance.
Okay.
That's my motion.
I would second that. I second that.
Okay. Thank you.
Member Looney?
Yes.
Member Kurzman?
Yes.
Vice Chair Stevens?
Yes.
Chair Rothenberger?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Well, and our next issue is actually the beach ordinance. And that was the beach ordinance.
That was the beach ordinance, wasn't it?
That was it. I think that we've
Well, there's the quarterly report.
right.
Well,
But the items that we were going to have a
And
quick
then-
discussion with John.
Yep. So if we could get the report from you, and then we'll deal with John's.
on the beach ordinance, I mean, we are going to do the second round, but I'll just say that I'd like to see the thing. I'll just wait till we do the discussion on it. Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, so for the beach quarterly report, it's attached to the agenda. It's pretty straightforward. I can tell you moving forward, though, I'm not going to be able to prepare such a report because I don't have access to this information any longer. My role has changed. I don't know what the activities, special events are necessarily going to be going on board, how many weddings there are going to be. So I'm not going to be able to provide that information moving forward. I do have access to the Sheriff's Department violations, so I can report on that to you. That's pretty straightforward as it is.
Who has that information now? What stuff you lost access to?
The Parks and Rec Department.
They can't give you, or whomever, if it's you or someone else, I'm assuming
I could
that
request it for them to give it to me, I suppose, yeah. I'm not sure who your liaison's going to be moving forward, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
So, but I can try and gather whatever information I can and continue reporting this if I'm still here. And that's pretty straightforward. You can see there's a lot of warnings issued and not too many citations. But this probably leads on to your new discussion item about zero tolerance enforcement policy, where they're wanting to get stricter on issuing more citations, I suppose, versus issuing warnings.
Do you know anything about the citation on somebody that got out and drove on the beach?
I don't know. I just heard about the incidents. I don't know much more about that.
All right.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. Yes, it is. All right. So now, John will pick up.
Well, so I had an opportunity to talk to one of the sheriffs or deputies or what have you, and he had said that, you know, he issues a lot of warnings, but that the city had asked him to start being much more strict. And this is before the announcement. And I had been at a city commission meeting. I don't know how many people watched the meeting, but after the renourishment of Passagrill, there was a discussion because there was complaints about too many people walking on the dunes in Passagrill. And so at that meeting, there was a plea to start enforcing and being stricter because there were just people, you know, were going crazy and going on the dunes and didn't care. And they said, okay, let's be stricter. But then by the end of the conversation, it came out that the dunes weren't yet marked. And then I went down there and I saw that you couldn't really tell they were dunes because it was just sand and then more sand. So I could understand people going on the dunes because they didn't look like dunes. They were just sand. And I think that sort of came out during the meeting too. And so I sort of felt like we were just sort of getting mad at people, and, you know, they didn't necessarily, you know, realize that it was just, you know, steeper sand. And so now I feel like it's sort of snowballing. And I just sort of feel like we're sort of not even in the loop, because here we are, you know, I've studied Cialdini, and I don't know if anybody knows who that is, but, you know, Cialdini is a social scientist. And he, for instance, researched how in Hawaii they put up signs and they said, you know, there's this much pounds of black sand is stolen every year, and so don't do it. But you know what? When people saw that sign, they went, that much is stolen every year? I'm missing out. And it actually caused more people to steal the sand. And they studied how, you know, when they did the carry out of the garbage and they took away the garbage pails, it actually caused people to litter more. And there's all these psychological things. And so he studies all those things. But anyways, it's good to not just always assume that, you know, the common things work. And it's helpful to, like, discuss it among other people. And, you know, we're a board that we volunteer to do these things because we think we have input. And I just wish that we have an opportunity to be involved and be in the loop. And so I was just shocked all of a sudden to see the announcement that on the 14th we already had a pilot program to do something new. And I don't know that you were consulted or anyone else was consulted, and I just don't understand, you know, how these things happen. And you know, I understand that I did a Google on zero tolerance, and I see that in Fort Walton Beach and Miami, they just started, or they have zero tolerance policies, but it's because they want to make sure that there aren't, you know, hordes of high school kids coming down for spring break. And of course, we don't want to be known as the one that doesn't have, protection against the hordes of high school kids for, spring break getting drunk. So, you always have to have your defensive measures too, but, we just have to make sure that, can't we just be in the loop? And that's sort of the summary of my other thing too. It's just like, how do we make sure we're in the loop?
Yeah, so I think you have to remember that most of these initiatives are driven from the commission. They would like to see certain actions. It's relayed down through the city manager, who then implements that, right? So that's how these policies get created, and next thing you know, there's a zero tolerance policy being.
Yeah, it takes a life of its own.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but it's a sensitive time too, and like someone said, people just see a new welcome message at the beach, and I don't know if that's so. Anyway, everybody's got well intentions, and we're all trying to do what we can to help do what we're trying to accomplish, and just.
I'm also torn on the zero tolerance. I see your point, and yes, it sounds harsh, but I'm on the beach every day. I see dogs on the beach every day. I see people in the dunes every day. Since I've been back 2 weeks, week and a half, I've been traveling. I've seen a material change in good behavior, and I've seen less footprints in the dunes. Now, down in Passagrill, and I'll give the city compliment, they put up a rope and post fence that actually marks it. But before that was there, and before the hurricanes, in the volunteering programs I do with sea turtle tractors and beach ambassadors, where I would walk the beach and clean, not a day go by that I didn't see people up in the dunes. Up at Upland Beach, they had signs all over the place when they had that new sand put up there, and you saw footprints and people there every darn day. So for us to say, hey, we're being harsh, they didn't know, and I do agree with the new ones, there's not plant life on there yet, but even when there was plant life, there's people in the dunes. So at some point, we got to say enough is enough and start holding people accountable. I walked up on beach last night just because I try and do the public beaches right before this, so I have like that. They do not. They have as you're going close to the secret garden, they have some rope and post fence there. It's just demolished. Upland Beach needs to be renourished in the worst way, but I get the issues with easements and all of that. Where we did planting there last year of new sea oats, the volleyball courts have gone west, and the benches there are less footprints, but there's not a rope and post fence there, and guess what? There are footprints. So for dogs on the beach, I actually have a view of the beach, and I watch, and before this went in place, I'd see multiple dogs every morning out there, not on a leash, and if you're a service dog, it needs to be in service on a leash, so I know this is not a service animal because it's not on a leash. Saw them all the time. I've seen zero since this has gone into effect. So it is having the intended effect. Now, back to your point, I think it's harsh, but at some point, we're all adults now, and I've never seen a kid walking dogs out there. It's time for us to get serious. So as I am torn, I am in support of the enforcement of this, because why have a rule unless you're going to enforce it? If not, let's just take it off the books. So that's my point of view. I've seen a material change in good behavior.
For dogs, I understand what your thinking is, and even for dunes, certainly for a contrast, I had people like last night telling me they heard that the sheriffs are going to be walking around with some sort of wand to sniff the drinks to see if there's alcohol in the drinks. I don't quite believe that. But I think there might be some constitutional issues, but
a black helicopter's going to be on the beach watching you or something.
Well,
I think that's a bit of.
But, you know, because I mean, residents like their Yetis, but, you know.
No one likes to have the rules enforced against them.
Exactly.
Everyone wants rules, but they don't want them to be held accountable to the rules.
well, I think also coming across the bridge and seeing the sign, it definitely makes you think, why am I here? Like, do I want to be on this beach? You know, am I going to walk out with a cooler and is someone going to stop me and say, let me see what's in your cooler? I mean, that's a concern. However, I think if we educate the community on why we have these rules, then you'll start to get buy-in. So you have to have buy-in on why do we not want dogs. I mean, you automatically, oh, there's the turtles. There's lots of other things. There's parasites. Everyone walks up and down the beach barefoot. I mean, if someone's dog is carrying a parasite and they leave behind, just because you picked it up doesn't mean that there isn't some remnant. These are things you don't typically see here, but it could still happen. There's lots of reasons for the rules, and I think if there aren't good reasons, then why do we have the rules? So I think, you have to go back to buy-in, and we need to educate the public and the residents. I talked to a resident, was like, I pay taxes. I should be able to walk my dog down the beach. And I kind of just, shook my head like, okay. But so I think you have to have buy-in, because if you don't have buy-in, then people are going to try to break the rules, and they're going to get angry, and, I don't want to get fined because, I've done something that I don't think should be a rule on the beach. So I think we all have to have reasons for things.
I agree. The other thing, when I did the walk, every public access point has a sign that says no alcohol, no dogs, stay off the dude, has all of that. And it's been there for years.
Yes. Okay.
But that gets back into to your point about engagement. I'll use it as that, community engagement. And one of the ideas for the goals of the committee, a whole community outreach and engagement, that should be a part of that. Here's the rule, but here's why we have the rule.
Right.
You might disagree with the why, and you might not like the rule, but it's the rule.
Yeah. And let me just ask, and it sort of still ties into this question. So I wrote another letter to the city commission before yesterday's meeting, and I want to make sure it's not in the shade. So I want to send it to the other beach stewards, but I also want to make sure it's not in the shade. So what is the process so that it's, available to the public and, appropriate?
If you have any communications at any time that you want shared with the board, you can always share those with the liaison or the clerk's office, and we forward those off immediately.
To the other stewards?
Whoever you request.
But then how does it not be a shade communication? How will the public ever see it?
It's part of the public record that
It is
can be
part of the public
accessed.
record.
So if they,
It doesn't necessarily, it needs to be published everywhere. It's accessible as a record.
then
That's how I
how would the
understand
public ever see it?
They would have to, for that instant, they would have to request any Freedom of Information Act, which
Okay.
I know you know how to do that.
Okay, so that's just basic, okay. So it's not part of it's part of the
Published, right?
published, okay. Very good.
It's still public.
It's public, yeah. Got it. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? You good?
I'm good, thank you. Those are my items.
Okay. I have one thing to bring up. I think we need to find a person for...
Yes. The missing spot.
Yes, definitely. Brad has missed a few meetings and
You might reach out to Commissioner Marriott, right?
ask him.
Because our rule is
Maybe ask
3.
Commissioner Marriott to engage with our missing member.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay,
Thank you.
that is the end of this meeting.
Thank you all for coming.
Yes, thank you for coming.